She was supposed to be dead in 3 episodes. Instead, she got her own show. 6 seasons, 134 episodes, shot in New Zealand and sold into more than 100 countries. By year 2, it was the highest-rated syndicated drama in America, and in February 1997, it posted a 7.8 household rating, the biggest number any syndicated action hour managed that whole season. It knocked Star Trek off a spot Star Trek had held since 1987. Then it got strange. An episode pulled off the air in nearly every country on Earth. A studio note so nervous the 2 leads weren't allowed in the same shot in their own opening credits. And a cancellation that makes no sense on paper, because the day they killed this show, it was still #1 in its entire genre. This is the rise, the backstage chaos, and the bitter ending of Xena, Warrior Princess. Let's go all the way back to 1995. If you wanted to make a TV show that year and you didn't want a network breathing down your neck, you went into first-run syndication. You made the show yourself and sold it station by station, market by market. Hundreds of independent stations across America needed something to fill Saturday nights, and they'd buy almost anything with a sword in it. Star Trek. The next generation had already proved you could get rich this way without ever touching ABC, NBC, or CBS. 2 guys from Michigan were doing very well out of it. Sam Raimi and Rob Tapert had made the Evil Dead films together on pocket change, and in 1993 they launched Hercules: The Legendary Journeys with Universal. Kevin Sorbo, Muscles, Sandals, New Zealand standing in for ancient Greece because New Zealand was cheap and the exchange rate was friendly. It worked. So in early 1995, the Hercules writers needed a villain. Tapert brought in a writer called John Schulian to build one. A warlord with a real body count, someone genuinely nasty for the hero to fight. 3 episodes and she dies at the end. That was the entire plan. They cast a local New Zealand actress who had already done 2 tiny parts on the show. She turned up, she was terrifying, and then something happened that producers dream about and cannot manufacture. The audience picked her, the mail came in, Universal looked at the reaction and decided the dead villain shouldn't die. She should get her own series. And this is where the whole thing nearly collapsed before it existed. Tapert wanted the spin-off. Universal wanted the spin-off. What nobody wanted was the job. The part went out, and the answers came back no. The first actress actually cast as Xena was Vanessa, a British actress you might know from Weird Science. She had it. Then she got sick and couldn't fly to New Zealand, and a shoot on the other side of the world doesn't sit and wait. The story from the production is that the role then went to Kim Delaney from Tour of Duty, and that fell through too. More names, more no's. Tapert's account is blunt. Universal eventually told him to go get the woman who'd been in that last Hercules and dye her hair black. That was Lucy Lawless. 27, from Auckland, a former Mrs. New Zealand, best known at home for a sketch comedy show. Years later, she described her own casting like this. It fell to her when everybody else turned it down, and she was the lucky local kid on the spot who got the gig. So the biggest female action star of the decade got the part because she lived within driving distance of the set. Hold on to Lucy, because the worst thing that ever happened to this show didn't happen on the set at all. I'll get to it. Xena. Warrior Princess premiered on September 4th, 1995. The setup is a redemption story, which for a syndicated action hour in the 90s was almost highbrow. Xena used to be a warlord, she burned villages. She has a body count she can't put down, now she's trying to work it off, and she picks up a farm girl called Gabrielle, played by a Texan actress named Renee O'Connor, who wants to be a bard and follows her around writing it all down. That relationship is the show. Not the chakram, not the war cry, not the wire work. 2 women on a road, one carrying guilt and one carrying a scroll. It took off fast, and it took off in a way nobody at Universal planned for. Season 2, Xena became the highest-rated syndicated drama on American television. Then, in February 1997, it hit that 7.8, the strongest week any syndicated action hour had all season. By May 1997, it had taken the #1 syndicated slot off Star Trek: The Next Generation, which had owned that position since 1987. Tapert's own reaction to TV Guide at the time tells you how unplanned this was. He said their goal had only ever been to knock Baywatch off #2. Beating Star Trek was something he never expected to pull off. Comics from Dark Horse, a PlayStation game, an animated movie with Hercules in January 1998. Conventions. The show was costing over $1 million an episode, which for syndication in the 90s was enormous, and Universal was happy to keep paying because the returns were there. There was one person watching all this who was not thrilled about it. The man playing Hercules. I'll come back to him at the end because what he eventually said out loud is genuinely something. October 8th, 1996. Lucy Lawless flies to Los Angeles to promote Season 2 on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Somebody in Leno's writer's room has an idea. Wouldn't it be funny if Xena rode into the studio on horseback in full costume through the parking lot? The horse lost its footing on asphalt. Lawless went down and fractured her pelvis in multiple places. She never made it to the interview. She went to hospital instead. The horse, for what it's worth, was completely fine. Now think about what that means for a production. Xena is in almost every scene of a physically brutal show, filmed 12,000 kilometers from that hospital bed. Universal's spokesman told Variety production would be minimally affected, which is what spokesmen say. What actually happened is that the writers had to invent their way around their own lead. The broadcast order got shuffled, guest actors got pulled in fast, including Bruce Campbell, and the writers reached for the one trick that solves everything. They wrote episodes where Xena's mind ends up in somebody else's body. Bruce Campbell plays Xena, Hudson Like plays Xena, Lucy Lawless barely has to move. To this day, the people who made the show can't agree on which episode was the workaround. RJ Stewart says one, Tapert says another, fans say a third. She was back at work by the end of November, a month earlier than the doctors expected. If you watch this show every week and had no idea any of that was going on behind the scenes, give the video a like. I want to see how many of us were actually there. And subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. But the fight that shaped this show most wasn't about horses. It was about what the audience had noticed. Because by 1996, a huge and very vocal part of the Xena audience had worked out that the show they were watching wasn't really about a warrior and her sidekick. Xena and Gabrielle read as a couple. The looks, the physical closeness, the fact that neither of them ever seemed remotely interested in anyone else for long. And the people making it were doing it on purpose. Liz Friedman, a producer on the show and an out lesbian, said openly at the time that she had no interest in saying these two were heterosexual. She talked about slipping in references she knew certain fans would catch without setting off any alarms for anyone else. The studio caught on. Tapert has said that Universal's note was about the title sequence. The two of them were not allowed to appear in the same frame in their own opening credits. The reason given was advertisers. He's described it as one of the only times executives ever told him flatly he couldn't do something. They were that strict, he said, about not implying there was anything between them beyond good buddies. So the writers did what writers do when they're told no. They put it in everywhere else. Which brings us to the thing I promised you at the start. February 1999, Season 4. The show does a run of episodes set in India, and one of them, called The Way, has Xena praying to Krishna for help, then transforming into the goddess Kali to fight a demon. Before it even aired, a letter arrived at the production, February 23rd, 1999, from the press secretary of the World Vaishnava Association. The objection was that Krishna, to devotees, is not a plot device you can hand a script to. The episode aired across North America on schedule. Then the real fight started. A delegation went to Universal Studios to complain in person and got turned away at the gate by security. Their spokesman told The Hollywood Reporter that Universal had spat in the face of Hindus worldwide by refusing to meet them. Once Variety and The Hollywood Reporter both picked it up, Universal folded, the studio apologized, and pressured Rob Tapert to pull The Way out of circulation, not off American TV, worldwide. An episode of the #1 action show on television was erased from the schedule of nearly every country that bought it. It has still never aired on British broadcast television. Fans ran a petition campaign to get it back, and it worked, sort of. The episode returned in a re-edited version with a film disclaimer on the end, featuring Lucy Lawless, Renee O'Connor, and a Hindu community representative explaining that the producers had taken liberties. The original cut has never appeared on DVD. Here's the part that stings. The Way was the second highest rated episode of that entire season. Now, the ending. The version you'll usually hear is that ratings fell and the show got old and Universal pulled the plug. The ratings did fall. Season 5 averaged a 3.4, down from a peak of 5.7 in 1997 to 98. That's a 40% drop. But that number is a symptom, not the cause, and the cause is the actual story. Between 1995 and 2000, the independent stations that made first-run syndication possible stopped being independent. They became WB affiliates. UPN affiliates, Fox, PAX, and an affiliate doesn't buy expensive syndicated action hours to fill Saturday night because the network gives it programming for free. So the good slots vanished. Xena didn't lose its audience to a rival, it lost its shelf space. Push a show off primetime and onto a weekend afternoon and the rating collapses whether or not anybody stopped loving it. On October 16th, 2000, Studios USA announced the cancellation. And this is the detail that should stop you. At that moment, Xena was still the top-rated first-run action hour in America and had been for 4 straight seasons, not fading. #1 in its genre on the day it was killed. Steve Rosenberg ran Studios USA domestic television, and he said the quiet part in the trades. He said the problem was time period availability. He said with the first run market as it was, you were relegated to weekends between 6 and 8, or worse, weekend afternoons, and it was very hard to get sampled. And then he said this: if the Tribune stations, or any major station group, came to him and said they wanted to run Xena at 9 o'clock on Saturdays, they'd keep producing it. Nobody did. That was it. A show with $1 million an episode budget and no $1 million hour left to put it in. And then Rob Tappert decided how it would finish. He directed the 2-part finale himself and co-wrote it. It takes Xena and Gabrielle to Japan, digs up a chapter of her past where 40,000 people die in a fire she caused, and then it kills her. She's shot full of arrows and beheaded by a samurai. She's given a chance to come back, and she refuses it because coming back would betray the dead. Gabrielle sails away alone. Fans lost their minds. The reaction was big enough that mainstream press covered the fandom's reaction as its own story. Tappert's line at the time, they'd certainly taken the heat. Now the irony. That final episode, the one people were furious about, tied the show's highest household rating of the entire season at 3.9, up 22% for the week. It was the only time all year Xena finished as the #1 first-run weekly hour in America. It even beat the Hercules finale's 3.7. The most watched hour of the last season of Xena was the one where they killed Xena. When the director's cut came out on DVD in 2002, one of the changes was cutting that last shot of Gabrielle sailing off on her own. The backlash had got to them. Lucy Lawless never had to look back. She married Rob Tappert in 1998, and she's worked steadily ever since. Battlestar Galactica, Parks and Recreation, Lucretia on Spartacus from 2010, Ash vs. Evil Dead. Since 2019, she's been leading My Life is Murder in New Zealand, which she also produces. Renee O'Connor kept acting and stayed close to her. In 2021, 20 years after the finale, O'Connor guest starred on My Life is Murder. It was the first time the two of them had acted opposite each other since Xena died. Kevin Smith, who played Ares and stole every scene he was in, is the one that hurts. In February 2002, months after the show ended, he was in China finishing a film. He'd wrapped his contract the day before. He fell from a prop tower, went into a coma, and died in a Beijing hospital at 38. He just landed a part opposite Bruce Willis. And Kevin Sorbo. Remember him. In 2001, Sorbo told SFX magazine what had actually bothered him about the spin-off, and it wasn't the subtext, whatever else he said. It was staffing. Xena, he said, took all his directors, half his writing staff, half his crew. Everybody went to work on that show. Why, he asked, are you stabbing us in the back? We're the show that started it. Hercules ended in 1999. Xena ran 2 years longer. There was one last shot at bringing it back. NBC announced a reboot in 2015 with Raimi and Tappert attached. Writer Javier Grillo Marxuach came aboard, then walked in April 2017 over creative differences, and NBC shelved the whole thing that August. So the show that was built out of a character who was supposed to die in 3 episodes ran 134, got yanked off the air in most of the world, outlasted the series that created it, and then ended with its own creator taking her head off. They finally got her. It only took 6 years. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give the video a like and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Thanks for watching.